All right, welcome to the March 15th meeting of the Planning Board. I'm Jeff Brand. I'm the acting chair. Present today, we have members Ron Allett. We got Buddy Hackett. We got Andrew Milanikis. See Stephen Diamond remotely.
Greetings.
Andy Knapp. And we also have Bob Tessier, right? And we have two other board members sitting. John Driscoll.
Just one.
Just one.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Andy is a new role, not ex officio. He's now a member.
Right. And we tonight we don't have an ex officio member, but we expect we will have by the next meeting.
Ex officio to official.
Right. So we also have present. We have Vanessa Price, our new town planner. So welcome aboard. And we also have John Hawkins, code enforcement for Irvine from the Planning and Land Use Office. And of course, the techie extraordinaire and town administrator, Mr. Connor McIver. Oh, and I'm sorry, Carol. And we have Carol Ogilvie, our contract planner here. She's participating remotely. So I've never seen this big of a crowd.
Small crowd, big group.
Yeah. So the first order of business are the minutes for the March 1st, 2022 meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes?
Just to make it, you should.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are right. Connor brought that up. All right. So voting members will be myself, Steve Diamond, Andy Knapp, Ron Allard, Buddy Hackett, Andrew Milanikis. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's correct, because you
Right, we don't have the ex officio. So those will be the voting members for tonight. Okay, so back to the minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? Here, a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from March 1st meeting.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Andy Knapp, second by Ron Allard to approve the minutes for the Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 meeting as written. So I'll do a roll call. Andy M.
Andy, am I?
Buddy Hackett.
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard.
All right.
Andy Knapp.
Knapp, aye.
Steve Diamond.
Diamond, aye.
Brand I. Okay, so the minutes of the meeting are approved unanimously. All right. Next order of business is to discuss a continuance from March 1st on application 223.26.57.RC-22, a development on Route 125, originally submitted with Joe Falzone as owner, but ownership since that application submitted has been transferred to John Neal of Stone Arch Development Corp. I have one question here before we start, so I understand what direction we're going. There was a comment made that the application was accepted as complete and approved on March 1st, 2022. I do not recall that we,
accepted as complete.
right, well, okay. So the it wasn't approved. The application was accepted, but we didn't actually process the notice of decision. I just want to.
Was going to make a few changes that.
Right. And I That's where I thought we stood. I just wanted to ensure. Okay, so would the applicant like to come up and address the board and tell us what you've done?
Good evening, everyone. Scott Cole from Beals Associates. I'll try to update everybody as I can. This is a lot of new faces. This is an existing application in front of the board. It's a multi-use proposal. It has commercial units on the lower floors, residential above. Has 8 residential units, commercial and residential, with a separated 8-unit garage bay basically into the rear. Most of the drainage was pre-designed as a result of the at Green Hill subdivision, which basically surrounds this property. So during our last meeting, we had some meaningful conversation on some of the visions and actual uses within the building and the garage themselves. As a result, we have modified the plan somewhat to change. Let me see if I can. Garage bay use. So previously we had residential parking was proposed in the commercial building. High opinion that that was not a good idea, so we have actually revised the plan to show residential parking in separate garages in the rear. We have actually added notation requirement. Well, residential garage units with 2 interior parking spaces and 2 exterior, of which 1 is reserved for parking. During the course of the day, somebody will be able to, visiting the premises will be able to park spaces only for the hours. During the non-operational hours, you can see there's plenty of parking spaces that would be both front and back. Because of the actual change, I wanted to make sure and ensure that Chief Walker or the fire department would have access around the building. So we have actually added the no parking fire lane. So this is to park and did was actually in discussion with Steve. There's the large commercial spots western side of the building. We have angled, as you can see, the 60-degree parking. Now drive in there, like back up. In addition to that, we have removed, some shrubbery, minor landscaping on the side of the building. We just in case, provide accessibility for the. In actuality, the landscape probably wouldn't have survived there anyways for plowing. As noted, I believe by Mr. Brand at the last meeting, we have added an additional note to the town notes.
Yeah, on sheet 3.
Right.
I'll just note, if you go back to the regulations, it says that those notes will be on the plans, which you have done. You added, I saw that. But it also says it'll be on the title page. So.
Yep. The recommendation by the final.
Address that in the notice of decision.
Yep. The other items that were in discussion that evening were the actual lighting design. Got a whole engineer, I think, who has redesigned the entire lighting schematic. So now at no point lighting site go above the maximum noted. I believe the maximum for a medium design is 2.4. He has a maximum now of 2.1. You can see around the site adequate light is provided. All the parking and pedestrian areas. In addition to that, we should have a hand is a wall schematic, is also supplied as required.
Is that this?
Correct.
Okay, so I will just say that we had no idea what this was, because labeling here.
Yep, from my discussions with him, it's not done very often. That's very similar to what condos on the project.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to accept. And then finally, leave on parking.
I will say that on the illumination diagram, it did show what the area was that was flooded by the lights on the buildings. That was.
Lastly, and I believe it was see the units 1 through 4. In addition to that, tire plan set, I did the planning board signature to a their requirement, getting that we had before, and it should be outside. I hope comments and
I know you mentioned it, but can you revisit something about the uses for the commercial space?
yeah, so right now the proposed uses on the bottom, the actual bottom commercial space, all units in its entirety right now will be actually occupied by the owner, who's going to be the developer of the subdivision behind. So there will be, I would imagine, engineers, architects,
Draftsman.
draftsmen in that nature.
Real estate people.
Is that specified on the plans or somewhere in your application?
It is not. This would you as going.
Okay, and operational hours for the commercial space?
I would pick hours that would be used even if you sold it afterwards or even that can be used, like you rented out. 4:30 if you're just using it for your commercial site, 5 o'clock.
7 to 9, 7 a.m., 9 p.m.
You just want it noted so that it can be on the plan and that. I'm not.
Total, which is good.
Being that this plan set won't have a recorded plan, is there a preferred plan for that to be on
Put it on the cover sheet, I think would be nice to have it.
the cover sheet? So 7 to 9, is that acceptable? Is that what you're saying?
7 a.m., 9 p.m. Yep.
Okay,
Just,
the other,
we can bring it up, it was part of the stuff before. The uses before, a lot of times you would have, the board would request like a list of uses
Right.
that were gonna be allowed. They're saying commercial use, so if they just put commercial use, if anything on the table of uses meets a commercial use, then it would be allowed. If you guys want to go to your zoning and look at what commercial uses are, then you'll understand that if they put that there, those are the uses that would be
okay.
allowed with that note.
How about if we have any questions from the board, I open the public meeting hearing, and then once we close that and the board goes to deliberations, we can look at that. All right. Okay, does the board have any other questions before I open the meeting up to the public?
I have questions. The new parking arrangement, 2 exterior spots, those in front of the garage, and one of which is available to visitors during the day.
Correct.
I don't think that works very well. What if I have 2 cars in the garage? You have a visitor park in front of one where I have a car in the garage and I want to get out during the day. I work from home or whatever. That doesn't seem like a very good arrangement to me.
Well, as it is, with the amount of people that are going to be actually in the commercial for now, there's adequate parking, even if they had to park out front.
Yeah, but
However, even above that, I find I don't think somebody's gonna actually own 4 vehicles and store 2 of them in the garage.
No, I'm saying, what if I get 2 vehicles in the garage and a visitor takes one of the spots in front of the garage? How do I get out?
Well, yeah, you're right, but how is that any different? I have a 2-car garage, right? And when
No,
somebody
I'm
comes
saying
in and
a
parks.
visitor that I don't know. Remember, I'm talking a visitor.
Okay, well, if I have a visitor comes to my house,
I'm not talking about your visitor. I'm talking about a commercial visitor. Somebody who's coming to the office who parks in that space.
but that's the resident parking. That's not commercial.
But one of them is available for visitors during the day.
Correct.
For a visitor to the residence.
To that residence only, is that what you're talking
I'd
about?
rather have it residents only. Do I have enough space out front, Scott, that would accommodate the entire commercial? So how many spots?
Oh, you did?
That's the intent. The parking spaces in the back are residential only.
Only, okay.
In the
That's
front
what
are
was
commercial only.
I can understand.
So
Misunderstood.
what Ron is saying, if somebody comes to visit, maybe somebody
But if somebody comes,
else's tenant.
that's resident parking, and those are resident visitor spots,
Correct.
then that's no different than someone coming to my house. Somebody that comes and visit me at my house is gonna park in front of one of my garage doors.
Visitor is not coming to your house, coming to somebody else's house or for a commercial reason.
Well, they better not be parking in my driveway.
It'd be limited to that's your use. And that's,
Yeah.
I think as long as limited to that,
yep, this should.
I don't want to have anybody blocked in to the garage because somebody parked in a visitor spot.
Yep.
They don't know who they are. So now I want to get out. It's a car parked in the visitor spot. And I don't know who it is. I got to hunt them down in order to get out. I want to avoid.
We could certainly put unit numbers on the garages.
I think it's a good idea.
Then you know.
Yeah.
This.
Or a sign that says resident visitors.
I was actually gonna make that recommendation. If you're specifying the unit numbers of the commercial space, that you should specify the unit numbers of the residential, just so that you don't run into a situation like Ron's talking. Otherwise, Knights probably won't find the extra business.
Yeah, no, we put a number.
Absolutely. Yeah, the garage and the spaces in front of the garage for the personal use of the,
That's an idea.
have the garage, to be quite frank.
Promote business intent, just put the number for the tow
Yeah.
truck.
Seen them painted, but they tend to wear off.
Yeah.
I think a nice house number on the garage, just like you're gonna have on the unit, you look a lot.
Yeah. Does that address your concern?
Yeah.
All right. If there, yeah, Steve Dime?
Yes, thanks. I thought there was going to be more of a specific use in terms of maybe it's office work, maybe.
I think we're gonna come back. Steve, we're gonna come back to that.
It's
We're gonna check
clear
the
as
zone.
far as what the infrastructure and whatever can support of it, like depending on how many people are visiting, there's a lot of factors. We kind of, I thought it was, everyone was clear that we was going to have a specific set of categories of what this space was for.
Steve, maybe you didn't hear it before, but we said that after we close the public hearing, go to
Oh, sorry.
deliberations. It was given an opportunity for people to look at the zoning and what the uses are and
Oh.
how we might limit that in accordance with the zoning table.
Okay, if that's to happen next, great.
Okay. Okay. So if there's no further questions, then I will open the public hearing on this application. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak with respect to this application, please step up to the table. If there's anybody that's listening to this that wishes to make a comment, raise your hand in the application or *6 to unmute your phone, and then we'll be able to hear you.
I don't see anything. So if you
Okay.
want to stand up, there's a member behind you. that-
Yeah, Scott, could you let him get it?
I just had a question on snow storage. It's gonna, I suppose logically you'd push it off the front of the commercial side with land slopes down, just but there.
Okay.
Sort of in this area here.
No, that's a good question. Actually go to the grading plan.
Oh, okay.
So we have left the whole, if I can address the board, we have left the whole front of the commercial building on the other side of the driveway relatively open, which actually has a drainage swale. It's the perfect conditions for the snow to go in there,
Thank you.
slowly melt, be treated, and then go into the forebay.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like? If anybody is listening online or on the phone, *6 to unmute your phone. You can use the application, Microsoft Teams, raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you and you can speak.
I don't see anything lighting up on this end, Mr. Chair.
Okay, hearing no further comments, I close the public hearing. So now let's talk about, it's time for the board to deliberate. As part of that, we said that we were going to pull up, look at the uses that are described. I mean, right off the bat, I don't think we want a commercial garage operation under the residences, you know. But so there might be a few things. Have you, let's look here. Yeah, do you have access to these
I did not.
the zoning?
I didn't get in that depth.
Okay, so that's on page 93 of the regulations, zoning order, excuse me. So
We're suggesting, Jeff, we.
is this the village district or
No, it's the commercial.
regional commercial? Okay.
And if you look on the commercial section, it gives you all the listed uses that are commercial.
Yep.
The way the regulations are written, it can be
Business, service.
commercial, industrial, or, the business use.
Well, okay, so looking at this list for highway commercial district overlay.
Highway, okay.
Yeah, it's highway, so it's the last column. If you look, most of the,
No, it's the next to the last
Uses.
column. It says regional commercial.
oh, regional,
No commercial, correct.
oh, this isn't within the overlay?
No, it's.
No.
it's
Okay.
straight up Regional commercial.
All right.
And then the uses are on the left side. And then
Okay.
above each, uses, you have a big section that says, commercial use, and then
Yep.
there's another one that's.
Got it.
Well, I don't think we want to permit assisted use.
What size of the, is the office area in front of the garages there?
Yeah, yes, the offices are on the front side.
Right, yeah, what are the dimensions of
18 by 24.
24, yeah.
18 by 24?
That balance is probably 24 by 24 backside. So I'm not sure how we're gonna split. Can't really use the garage. I want to keep it as a garage, even for storage, much less than 22 feet. So it may be an even split. But quite frankly, it could be a garage door that's not even used because we may expand. But, my whole limitation there, all is that the amount of water that I'm having to come up with for a water system and a cistern. And so quite frankly, we're limited as to how many people can be in there. I have my own limitation with the state of New Hampshire regarding water system.
Water
So,
supply.
I thought that cistern that's going to be over across the street was sized.
He's not talking, for fire protection, Mr. Chairman, he's talking actual domestic use, which is regulated
Oh.
by DES.
Okay,
And fire suppression within the building. So I have to have my own cistern independent on that lot. That has nothing to do with the cistern that's on the road. So.
So if this, we approve this as commercial in general, I mean, I would have a lot of specific concerns about a gas station or a funeral home or a distillery that are separate from what I would be concerned about here with what I understand this to be right now.
I share those concerns, although not as much for the distillery as some other people may have.
I'm kind of in favor of the Sterling. myself.
Yeah.
If I may, I would think any of those uses at least require an amendment to the plan because this would be a very irregular shaped gas station or anything like that. So you.
Well, the other part is this is going to affect the loading on your septic system. And that's, that's going to be a limiting factor there. That's one of the reasons that we're interested. We went through this with the multi-use on the new DUD development, is that they had proposed some uses for the commercial space that would kind of lowballed the amount of sewage going into the septic system we suggested other potential uses. And they said, yeah, we might do that. Well, then you better think about that before you sink the leach field, or you're gonna have a problem. So,
I guess the reason why I brought it up is pick the uses that you feel are appropriate for what you want, and then that will be the uses that are approved. If you decide to do something outside of those uses in the future, then you would have to come back to the board. That was the reason why it was brought up.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, I think out of these, business and professional offices is definitely what you're talking about.
Mhm.
A whole bunch of other ones that are problematic, I think. Some aren't, some are.
well, if we were to tick down the list, arts and crafts, would that be a problem? No, I don't think so. Art studio, probably not. Automobile parts and supplies, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 30 plus of them, and I think if we just approve business and
Well,
professional
what-
offices, they
yeah.
can come back for something else.
It's up to them, you know, you
Right,
guys work.
right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's it's not us to tell them what it's approved for. Their
You should mandate
responsibility to request. what-
minimum
Yeah,
that
okay.
they want.
Sure, I have some storage. I picked some storage capability. So would that go into self-storage facility?
You could have that as part of it. I mean, you can have a list, pick out of there the 4, 5, 6 things that you think that are appropriate. Mention them to the board that you would like to have them. If they agree with that, then those lists will be part of their conditional approval that says that you're allowed to have those uses. And if you decide to have a use different than that, you'd have to come back for site approval.
So these are the uses. This is your,
On this whole page, all I see, quite frankly, is self-storage facility on that second page.
Or you can do not just the commercial, you can look at the other, what was it, was it a business use?
Where is the self-storage
You can
facility?
Look at all of those types of things. So there's, okay, I'm just gonna bring it up, for instance, let's say you had a contractor that wanted to come in and he had they do
you know-
glass repair. They wanted to have
Oh.
a front office, and then they got a place in that garage where they can have their materials and stuff to operate out of. Kind of like a contractor
17.
setup, whether it's a builder, a mason, a
It could
glass
happen,
guy, you know,
right?
those types of things. A lot of times that is a use that is one right around the corner. That time with that type of use. And that's kind of that, it's kind of like how you're planning on using it with that office in the front and your stuff in the back too.
Exactly. Never gave this a thought.
And those are all low water usage. It's not like you.
Would it be easier for you to limit my uses instead?
Yeah, you can just say, all I'm gonna do is this, and then that's it, and if anything else changes, they'd have to come back in. It's just, we're giving you the option to get a list of things. Usually what happens is it gets brought up earlier, so the applicant comes in with a list, and I realized tonight when we started this, that we didn't have one.
I mean, business and professional park is pretty,
That's a professional park, would be that same idea as what I just talked about, that.
Yeah.
Range.
and offices.
So if you did, business support services, business and professional office, business and professional park, that kind of,
and
sounds like
And
that would encompass all of the things.
yeah, if I can add storage in there, that would be,
And then, yeah, if you were to add storage, that sounds like, I'm not telling you.
maybe in
you
the
get
future,
to
somebody
pick.
then it says, I want to do a health club. I come back to you and say, hey, they want to do a dedicated health club at one of these units, and we'll come back and identify it. But that's not the intent now, but like you say, it could change.
Well, a health club might require more parking, those other types of uses too.
Yep. I
agree.
require a septic system updated, a new water system, who knows, you know? But I'm still limited by, quite honestly, septic loading, Scott, if I'm number one, would you agree?
Yeah, so if you're happy with those uses, that all fits in with the low,
I'm fine with those.
parking spaces that are required too by our regulations.
Yeah. So are you saying you want business support services, business and professional offices, business and professional park, and self-storage facility?
That's it.
Those are the 4 that you want.
One question with the self-storage, would that have to fall into their regular business hours at 7 to 9 as well as?
I think they're not talking traditional self-storage where it's, there's people going in and out all the time. You're talking about mostly for your stuff and maybe something else occasionally.
Yeah, I was hoping, and not to use the word self-storage, but, you know,
Long-term contract, not accessing on daily.
Well, we can, if it's self-storage, it's a business commercial use, that would be limited to the hours
Yeah.
that are being specified, 7 to 9.
And with the residential units above, you'd want to have a time.
I would think so. You wouldn't want people roping stuff in and out and garage doors going up and down with the residents after 9.
they're all belt drive though. They're very quiet now, these garage doors.
Okay, so it sounds like that's settled.
No, business park is conditional, right?
So,
That's the only one that's conditional.
Which
Business-
one?
Business professional park is.
oh, I
conditional.
see.
Yes, CP.
So that one's a conditional use. Which we can approve, but I just want to point it out, it's a conditional use, the rest of.
If
Uh,
that's the case, you'd have to do the.
We'd have to do-
tonight.
yeah, we'd have to
Might
do a
wanna take
9.
That out, so you don't have to deal with a 3.4.
Right. Yeah, so you've got business professional office, or you call it business professional park. It's not really, it's a mixed use. So it's not a business park, but you have business and professional offices. That covers what would be in a park plus
Yeah,
the
it
residences.
sounds like it fits your intended use for sure.
Right. And that would avoid having to process 9.4 times.
So basically you need, so this one right here, special
Well, then I won't-
permission to do, it's not,
I don't
the
need
other
that.
ones fit what you.
Yeah, let's do that.
The other ones
Take-
encompass what you wanted.
Yep.
All right.
That'd be per unit as well too, right? They come in and want special, want to change what the use is. It's not going to be for the entire development, it'd be per unit,
They can come back and ask whatever they want.
right?
Remember, we had that one where the guy wanted to change that one unit, you know, the
right.
out the welding.
Oh, right.
That's one unit on
Yep.
one.
Yeah, the capability exists that that can be one huge space downstairs and all be broken up as well, so.
Here's the self-use we keep talking.
That's the garages in the back on the commercial units.
He's talking about the check.
No, I'm just,
Looking on the
I was looking
regulations.
up,
Oh, because you got a 2017,
you're right, because I'm running up
Instead of
the old
20,
copy.
yep.
I have it.
he has, yeah, she
I have
has it also.
Into the office, we can give you a new one.
Oh, you guys.
Now that you're a new member.
Now that you're a real member.
Charge, yeah, I'll actually get an upgraded copy, all right. Because like, also with the accessory uses, you have private garages, which might.
Accessory use can't go underneath,
Oh,
because they have to have the commercial use in order for it to be viable. That's why
Yep.
they got that.
Right, can't call it
All right.
accessory, yeah, we had that whole conversation last time. Fine.
That thoroughly.
Yes,
Steve, based on this conversation, that we'll have it, that it's approved for business support services, business professional offices, and self-storage. That addresses your concern?
Great, sounds good.
Okay. All right, other comments, questions, issues? Okay. Not hearing any. Then I will read the draft notice of decision. All right. Mr. O'Neill, this is to inform you that Barrington Planning Board at March 15, 2022 meeting conditionally approved your application referenced above. All the precedent conditions below must be met by the applicant at the expense of the applicant prior to the plans being certified by the certification of the plans is required prior to commencement of any site work or recording of any plans. Once these precedent conditions are met and the plans are certified, the approval is considered final. Precedent conditions are not met within 12 calendar months to the day by March 15th, 2023. The board's approval will be considered to have lapsed unless a mutually agreeable extension has been granted by the board. So conditions precedent, add the following plan notes as required from Barrington Site Plan Review Regulations 3.2.10. The notes shall be located on the title sheet. We have added that also add the hours of operation will, for the commercial operation, let's see. Hours of commercial operation shall be between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Okay. Also add the plan that commercial operations, commercial uses will be limited to business and business support services, business and professional offices. I know you're trying to keep it.
I'm ready.
And self-storage facility. Number two, add the following to the plan, New Hampshire DOT approval number New Hampshire DES subdivision approval number, New Hampshire DES AOT permit number. Number 3, any outstanding fees shall be paid to the town. Number 4, prior to obtaining board signature, the applicant shall submit 3 complete paper plan sets and supporting documents as required in Article 3 with a letter explaining how the applicant addressed the conditions of approval. This shall include final and complete reports for all items submitted during the review for the town of Barrington's file. The chairman will endorse 3 copies of the approved plans meeting the conditions. The town will retain a signed and approved reproducible 11 by 17 inch and PDF format documents for the town records. General and subsequent conditions, where no active and substantial work required under this approval is commenced upon the site within 2 years from the date the plan is signed, this approval shall expire. An extension not to exceed 1 year may be granted, excuse me, by majority vote of the board, so long as it is applied for at least 30 days prior to the expiration date. The board may grant only one such extension for any proposed site plan. All other plans must be submitted to the board for review to ensure compliance with these and other town ordinances. This got kind of disjointed, like printed on different pages. There we go. And substantial work is defined in this section as being the expenditure at least 25% of the infrastructure improvements required under this approval. Infrastructure shall mean construction of roads, storm drains, improvements indicated on the site plan. The applicant's engineer shall certify in writing the improvements have been constructed as approved prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Any questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion?
To approve application 223-26.57-RC-22-SR.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Annie Knapp, seconded by Ron Allard to approve this application. So we'll do a roll call vote here. All right, Andy M.
Am I?
Buddy Hackett.
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard.
Allard, aye.
Annie Knapp. Steve Diamond.
Diamond Eye?
And Bran I. So congratulations. Best of luck.
Appreciate it.
And we appreciate your patience and working with us to get this done.
Much appreciated.
Okay. With that out of the way, we have now, the next thing up on the docket is to discuss the changes to the subdivision regulations. Did you make copy?
But I'm not gonna give it.
Okay. A what?
The site review. Just a sub.
Okay. And what did you plan on doing with this?
Because they're not gonna do it.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Where this is intended to be a little bit of a work session, I didn't know if you wanted to angle some of the tables so you could see each other.
That's,
Recording in the microphones, but it's up to you.
that's, yeah, that'd be fine if.
You guys want to take a couple minutes to do that so you see each other and everything?
Wings out here?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think we can.
Jeff, you sure you want to see this?
We already seen it and we can't
I'm not hearing you right now, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear us
Can you
now?
hear me now? Okay,
Yes, thanks.
So this fall, I recognized that it not only had to get done, but I needed to do it. So what I did was I had notes that Marcia and I had made. She had asked for some reviews. You'll see this coming up in the site review regulations. She had asked the town engineers to look at things like parking, and updating our regulations to be consistent with current ADA rules. I went to different departments. I talked to the fire chief, the road agent, and, you know, took all the information that I had, went back and looked at the statutes. For instance, I learned something in this exercise that I should have known, but didn't learn until I was working on the regulations is that there is, and you'll note that it's in here, there is a regulation that we had never actually implemented on revocation. So if you look at 676-4A, it talks about subdivision, site plan, any other approval which has been filed, that if you want to revoke that recorded approval, there's a process to go by. Now, I had, I believe, in error, considered, we write in our notice, the decision says, hey, 2 years from this date, your approval is no longer valid. Well, according to this, it says, it can be, let's see, may not be revoked in whole or in part by the planning board, except pursuant to this section and only under the following circumstances. But some of the circumstances are, has performed work, erected structure, established use, which fails to conform to statements, plans, or specifications. So if somebody doesn't do work with their approval, but it also says, has failed to perform any condition of approval within a reasonable time frame specified in the approval, or if no such time within the RSA 674-39. So even though we say in our approvals that you've got 1 year from this date to get the precedent conditions done, you've got 2 years to do substantial work, those are valid timeframes, but according to the revocation and record approval, it says the planning board, except pursuant, may not revoke in whole or in part by planning, except pursuant to the section. So this says, here's the process. Now, what it means is the process is basically, we send a letter to the applicant saying, hey, you exceed your time limit, we're going to revoke your approval. They have an opportunity to respond, whether we have a public hearing or not. I think part of the process is also to notify the abutters. Yes, it is to notify the abutters. And then it'll give the board's reasons for the revocation. So here's something that, I mean, it's pretty important. It's nowhere in our regulations. So I've added it in here and into the site plan review. So there's a lot of things that needed to get updated. Plus, for those people that have been on the board for a while, you know, we sit here and like, we're granting waivers over and over again for the same things, like sinking granite monuments under the subdivision regulations. And we keep waiving it because you can't put a granite bound in the middle of a granite stone wall. And, you know, so we keep doing it over and over. And, you know, been a lot of things like that. We said, oh, geez, you know, we need to update the regulations so that we don't keep doing these things over and over and over again. Those things are in here too. So there's a lot of reasons. The reason I said all that is that the board here, we have at times wordsmithed ad nauseum and accomplished little. I think in this particular circumstance, I want to emphasize the importance of getting this finally done and getting these things. I mean, if the board, you know, 6 months from now sees a few words they want to change, you can go back because we're in control of these regulations. The board, we draft the regulations. They get advertised, we have a public hearing, and the board votes, but we're in control of these regulations. So we can change them again, which is why it's kind of a crime that we haven't done it until now. So I would urge people not to spend a whole lot of time trying to wordsmith the crap out of this, and let's move forward and get this done now. So with that said, I have laid out here a spreadsheet that gives you the changes, what we're currently said, what the changes are, and an explanation of why the changes are being made. I also, and maybe, I guess it didn't get forwarded to all the board members, but I know I did forward, and John and Vanessa and Carol, they got a PDF of the regulations itself with the changes incorporated with the actual, changes highlighted, but they're the same things that are on the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was to facilitate our discussion without having to bury ourselves in a lot of lines of the regulations here.
And this way Jeff set it up here works perfect for sending out notices, because the notice says here's the change and here's the reason why, before you hold your hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I want to agree with that. I mean, this is an amazing piece of work, and it's very clear, and I think Bo's current explanation, I think this is great, fantastic. Reason we're going to miss you, Jeff.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because every place I've ever worked and done work, everybody says, wow, you're a pain in the butt while I'm there, but when I'm leaving, we're gonna,
You've never heard me say that.
Yeah, that's true. Buddy hasn't said that, but.
No, you haven't heard me say that.
You mean appreciation might keep someone from going out the door? What do you know?
So,
I thought it was the "we're gonna miss you" part, but.
oh, yeah, okay. You agreed with the first part, I know. But I see that that's a trait we share. So, with that said, do we want to just walk through these? Because I put them in the order of the articles as they appear in the regulations, and we'll walk through them one by one. If anybody has any objections or discussions, then do that. If not, we'll move on to the next one. Does that sound like a fair plan here? Yep. All right. Well, let's start with the first one, 431. Now, this was to update per the RSA, 21 days. And that was something that I can say the former town planner and I would venture to say the new town planner would welcome the 21 days. That was a change to the state statutes that were supported by planners around the state, because you all know with the process that somebody has to come in with the applications. So then Barbara and Vanessa have to distribute those things. They have to take a look at it because they're going to give us advice, the board. They have to distribute this materials. They have to post them on the website. And so there's, a lot to do. So invoking the state statutes is appropriate. Any questions about this one? Any objections?
Nope.
Okay, then let's move on. 5312. This is actually something that's also you'll find in the site plan review regulations, an update. But you remember we have been granting waivers because people have come in with 60-page plan sets, and our current regulations in the site review regulations, and actually depending on how you read our current regulations in the subdivision, they would require that you have a legend on each sheet of the plans. So this mirrors the wording that I rolled over into the site plan review that addresses the issue of you don't have to have a legend on every page of the plan. You got to have it on the first sheet of the plans. And this says if you get into, you've seen plans, let's like Dove Development. Dove Development had, they had the utility plans. There was one or two sheets that are utilities, then it's appropriate. And I advised Chris Berry that he needed to have all of the symbols in a legend on the utility, first page of the utility. Same thing for the erosion control and drainage system. So each subsection within the plans, we need to have a legend, so you don't have to go back to the first page of the plan. So that's how this was drafted, and that's, does anybody have any objections to this?
Sounds good.
Nope, sense.
All right, 642. And I will just say, if anybody, I gave you the explanations as best I could for what was written. If you have any suggestions on to improve the explanation prior to it going, being posted for the public hearing, then, you know, we can address that also. 642. So we made a change in site plan review regulations to say you got to have your documents in 7 days prior to the meeting, because people, and that is consistent with the existing planning board rules of procedure. But we had people, because it wasn't in our regulations in either site plan or subdivision, people don't go and look at the planning board rules of procedure as normal. And so we put it in the site plan. This mirrors what went into the site plan. And so that people get their documents in, because again, even if they're revised materials, like they just submitted a new plan for the application that we just acted on, that gives the time for Barbara to get it in, get it distributed. Vanessa looks at it, gets it to the board. We have time to review it prior to. People have submitted revised documents the day before a meeting. Well, I mean, some people on this board work, they don't have time, and it's almost impossible for Barbara to get them distributed. People get emails, people don't always read their emails. That just was not tenable. So this invokes a similar requirement from the site plan review. So new materials, 15 days, revised materials,
7 days.
7 days. And actually, this, you notice the deadline shall be stated in the motion to continue. That's existed in the regulation. And frankly, I've started doing this in the last couple of meetings, but we kind of fell down on this. So that's something for the board to remember and remind the chair if we don't, and other people when we're making motions, that if we're continuing a case, then when we continue it, if there's any documentation that needs to come in, we need to specify the date by which the document. Ensure that the applicant knows they got to get it in if they want to.
Yes.
Discuss it at that meeting. Okay. 821, that is simply, I added that in that this sounded like an affirmative statement without exception on approval will become filing only upon public hearing. Not exactly true. There are conditions under which any approval, it can be waived under the state statutes, and those are delineated in 822. And, you know, if you make minor corrections to a plan, that does not have necessitate another public hearing. So those are laid out in the regulations in both the site plan and subdivision regulations. I looked at this statement and said, yeah, we better note that there are exceptions to this, so people don't interpret this literally. And people, for those that know, there are people, particularly if they have objections to what we're doing, that will try to use the regulations against us in a literal sense. This points that out. Any questions or objections?
I think it was talked about quite a bit, so.
You'll notice over time, over the past, I mean, I've been keeping kind of a little notes on the side over the past 3 years. I mean, there's a lot of these are things that we said, oh, man, we need to fix this. We need to fix this. Well, the time has come. We finally get to fix this. Okay, 823, this is, we talked about this also. So this is to give an applicant 12 months to complete the precedent conditions. Currently, it says 6 months. we have found that the 6 months really isn't feasible in today's environment. Part of that has to do with the pandemic, but part of that has to do with changes that occurred at the state. I think several people on the board are aware that DES, in reviewing applications, there was a ruling by a judge that I think it's Fish and Game, we're not reviewing all these applications. Somebody raised this as an issue and ended up in court. And the judge says, oh, yeah, well, according to the regulations, yes, they do have to review these applications. Well, Fish and Game has one person to review this for the entire state. So all these applications came to a screeching halt. That affected Falzone's.
DOT was his biggest problem, but still.
Well, but the state, yeah, but that was affected. There were 2 or 3 that we had come before. So if you look at, and like I said, with the pandemic, you look at how much time it takes to get through DOT, New Hampshire DES, 6 months is no longer realistic. So Marcia and I had discussed this. I'm sorry to bring up her name. She was the former town planner. And we both felt that 12 months was much more realistic. Does anybody object to that or think that's out of line?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Carol, you've got experience. Does this sound reasonable to you?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. I see this all the time where sometimes even 1 year isn't enough, but at least it gives you a good starting point and they can come back and ask for an extension if they need to without going through another public hearing.
Right. Okay. Thanks. All right, then we'll move on. 825. Okay, this is what I talked about before. This is a part of the RSA that has never been a part of our regulations. And like I said, I plead, I was ignorant on this particular RSA myself, and but I think we need to stick it in the regulations. I can't recall during my time on the board that we've actually revoked someone's approval, but if the case ever arises, then we should have it in our regulations on how we're going to go about doing that.
I remember one not being reviewed before I was on this board. Gravel pit.
It expired. It didn't come back in front of the board.
Right, it expired, but they think they came back after it
No,
expired.
zoning change.
Yeah, there was a zoning change and they had to go through a conditional use and they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, well, but remember, we did have a housing subdivision that we approved 10 years ago, and they did come back and submit a new application.
They wanted to change it, but that one, the existing one was actually a phase 2 and it's still in effect. And the other one dropped it, so.
Yeah.
Because they did phase 1, phase 2 is vested by state law.
If you did more than 50% of the infrastructure work.
Well, once you do phase 1, you automatically vest phase 2 because of how the law is written.
Right. But like I said, should it ever arise,
The
then,
town might be able to move that and get it off its hands now and move forward.
okay. All right, 8.6. This is to update the regulations. This is just a little history on this one. So the state law RSA 674-39 changed to 24 months roughly 10 years ago from 12 months. We still have 12 months, but you noticed in the notice of decisions that we've approved over the past few years have incorporated the 24, because we would be in contrary to state law, which gives them the 24 months for significant substantial work. It gives them certain rights. They're excluded from subdivision, zoning ordinance changes, site review changes. So they're actually, for us to shorten that period would be denying them rights guaranteed under state statutes. So we have been doing this. When I first joined the board and had read the regulations, I had noted that we were doing something different than in the regulations. And what I was informed at the time was, well, we understood this needed to change. We couldn't go against state statutes. So we by state statutes, every single thing in this book for regulations, subdivision and site review, and it's written in the regulations as required by law, says that we can waive any requirement in it, period. And that has to be part of it. So what we've been doing was interpreted to be, because we're voting to approve these applications with the 24 months in there, that is a de facto waiver on the part of the board. It's a good story. I'm not sure whether it's a great one, but this is going to fix that. Okay, 8.8. Oh, yes. Speaking of granite bounds, this is one we've done umpteen waivers for. And so this says, hey, you know, we want granite bounds, but, you know, if there are legitimate reasons as to make their use unfeasible, then you can use an alternative without having to process a waiver. They would have to come in and give us a reason. And I used this particular language, their use unfeasible, because the one thing that we wouldn't want to say is somebody come in and go, well, I don't want to pay the money to do that. No, that's not a reason not to comply with the regulation. Its use has to be unfeasible.
Well, the other one I think we often see is I can't dig the hole for granite bounds in the winter time. And it's like, okay, well,
Set it in spring.
yeah, right. You can put in a temporary marker in the interim and then put the granite bound in the springtime.
Right.
Well, the other one we see,
Bond them, we've had quite often, those are all bonded as part of the stuff when the final road pavement goes in.
well, the other justification for this is, you know, backlot with it's gonna be 50-50. So you don't want to put a granite bounds in the middle of the road.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good example where it doesn't make sense.
Right. So this
Is
allows.
it unfeasible or infeasible?
Unfeasible.
Yeah, it's unfeasible. Mhm.
So, nobody has an objection, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, 8.9, this is back to the 2 years.
Actually, I think it's actually non-feasible.
I think they're probably all acceptable.
I think this alludes to the point Jeff was at the beginning, where if the language is a little off, we can clean that up after.
Right.
I have a new thesaurus app on my phone and I want to utilize it, so you can just stand down.
Okay. Well, we're gonna accomplish something while you're doing that.
Professional intervention, we gotta love it.
Okay, 8.9 is back to the expiring 2 years, no active or substantial work for RSA 674-39. Clarifies some language that if the plans are expired, they must be submitted to the board and via the normal application process. So they've got 2 years. If they don't, we can give them an extension for a year, as long as they apply for it 30 days prior to the expiration. But if they let the plans expire, we would then go back, give them the revocation notice. And if they want to move forward with the project, they resubmit them through the normal application process, because at that point, we're going back to verify that they're meeting all the current regulations and zoning. So it's appropriate for them to go to a new check.
Would it be, and never mind, it's not
That would be
relevant to
some of the gravel
regulation.
pit one, there's a change in regulations, so they had to come back with a whole different application because of that.
Yep,
So
yep,
that kind of clarifies that.
right, right. Okay,
So Jeff, after depth of research, it is unfeasible.
thank you. So,
Doing it wrong.
12.3.1
Ron.
parents 3.
Even a blind. man's ways.
Okay, here's, this fixes another problem we've discussed umpteen times at the. So with the current regulations, basically, the gist is, it says, you know, you can have a driveway service 3 lots. If you get to 4, there's a whole bunch of kabuki dance you do in order to allow that. but, what, we've had to deal with multiple cases where a developer buys land that has 4 lots or more, cuts a driveway in, but you can, and unfortunately, the way the regulations read currently, that driveway goes in, they only develop 3 of the lots. Therefore, it is a driveway. It doesn't have to meet the private road standards. They develop the 3 lots, then they start selling off the 4th lot, the 5th lot, the 6th lot. And the poor person that comes in and buys lot number 4 comes before the board and we go, oh, you gotta upgrade the road to private road standards. And they're like, what? This has happened multiple times. And so we've discussed this multiple times, said, all right, we need to fix this. A driveway can service up to 3 lots. The way it reads now is houses. This is how they were getting around the rules. They'd have 4 lots, but build 3 houses, so therefore it's a driveway, you know? So this, and then there were rules about, well, if you get to 4, it could be upgraded, you know, to a private road. This does away with that. John's right. We've had this discussion multiple times. We say a driveway can service up to 3 lots, period. Once you get up to 4, whatever you're putting in there for access is going to be a private road. And do away with it's houses, it's lots, it's not houses. That goes hand in hand with, let's see, with the next one, 12.4. This is where Carmen Drive. 4 or more lots, the roadway shall be built to town specs for a private road.
Can I just make a suggestion on that?
Sure.
Because the shared drive says that you can't have more than 4. So shouldn't this be 4 lots? So it'd have to be done to a private drive, because if you get more than 4 lots, you actually want it to be.
Is that, but does it currently say lots or houses?
It says houses, but
Yeah.
it says 4. But this new one that you wrote, it says 4 or more lots. I think once it hits the 5th lot, you gotta actually build the road to the town subdivision standards and how the rest of the.
All right.
That was,
Well, okay, so
so just-
this is still true, right? If it's 4 or more lots,
It says it's gonna be a private road.
it's gonna be a private road.
Yeah, but if you've got more than 4, don't you want it to be built to a subdivision road, not a private road?
Yeah, you say 4 lots or more.
Regulations.
That's there.
Oh, okay, right.
That's when I,
It should just be the 4 lots.
Oh, so it'd
has to
be-
built to a private road, and then don't say or more. Because
Right.
Once you get past the 4th one, they've got to build them to the regular paved thing when the whole bit with that subdivision.
Okay.
Which 4 lots, the
4
road
lots,
shall be
just end
built
it
to
there,
it.
don't say or more.
Right.
That way you're still staying under the whole bit with regular roads in the regular scope. You don't want the private road to be servicing 6 lots.
Okay, so it's not a driveway anyway, right? We're saying it's a
The
road.
driveway says you can have a max. of 4.
Okay, so anybody have a problem with 12.3.1 parent 3? Lots, common driveway.
I think you got that one perfect.
Okay, so we're changing houses to lots and limited to 3. All right, so then on 12.3.1.4, you're saying the roadway,
A common drive that says.
so
4
just scratch 4
or more.
or more,
Just scratch the or more.
or more, right?
now, this one I had a question on also, Jeff. It's-
Yep.
It's really the carryover of the language, planning board may consider a minor reduction of wind requirements. I mean, we can always do a waiver, right?
We can always do a waiver of
And-
anything in these regulations.
And it says minor, maybe that's a good thing to limit people from asking a lot. But maybe we should put some language in there for, you know, with proper justification or something like that.
The 4 lot requirement, if you read the rest of the regulations, the other stuff around it, says that 2 of them have to be front lots and then 2 of them back lots. So the whole idea was to
That one's-
limit the amount of curb cuts.
But that's going away.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that, John. I'm just talking about the language where it says, except the planning board may consider a minor reduction in width requirements. To me, do we need that language at all? Because we can always do a waiver, number 1. Number 2, if we leave it in, should we consider leaving minor in or taking
Okay,
it out?
well-
Or should we add some language that says with appropriate justification for waiver requests or something
Well,
like that?
that's, actually, that's a good point, Ron, and the reason I think so is backing up just 2 weeks. Think about the subdivision we approved where they had 16 feet wide driveway and they necked it down to 12
down toward the end.
But it's still within the regulations, so that wasn't a problem. Remember this,
And that was 3 lots, so it's.
Oh, that was
still
3
building
lots.
Driveway, so it doesn't matter.
right, so this
That
is,
wouldn't change.
so, except that the planning, so you're saying retain the words, except that a planning board
I
may consider a minor reduction in width.
am asking 3 questions. Number 1, do we need that language at all? Because we can always do a waiver. Do we put the language in and do we leave minor in or take it out? Because minor is kind of nebulous.
I would,
And then third suggestion is, do we put in also, if we leave it in, with appropriate justification or something like that? So make it clear they got to justify a
Well,
minor reduction in width.
they have to justify everything to us anyway, right?
why not just end it at for a private road? And
Right,
delete
right.
the rest of it, and then if they are looking for it, they have to come ask for it.
For a waiver. Yeah,
Great.
that's my question. Do we need it at all? Do we need it at all?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All that would go out. If you look at Jeff's proposal, if you take out the thing that says or more lots
Yeah.
and just leave what's exerting, all that other stuff that you were talking about, may give that minor reduction, that's all gone. I think, and that meets exactly what you're saying, right?
Right,
Well,
stop it for private road.
Yeah, for a private road, that would say, but it just gives the board a little more leeway without requiring you address things as a waiver.
Yeah, well, you kind of need, I think we kind of need a waiver anyway. They can ask for it, right?
If you're granting them a reduction, it is a waiver.
Right.
So, I mean, I know you carried over the language, Jeff. It's not your.
Yeah,
language. You
yeah,
carried
yeah,
it over.
okay.
But-
No, if the board thinks that's appropriate, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay,
But the private road built to subdivision standards, as you were saying.
Well, there's
there's,
subdivision road standards, there's a couple of things. There's one that says a private road. So it's got a narrower width.
Yeah.
And it says right in there, the
Okay.
planning board may do away with paving if necessary and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
But a regular subdivision road has a wider width, it's got wider shoulders, it has to be paved.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. So if you do a road which could possibly ever be taken over by the town, you want to make sure it's built to the town's road standards. You don't want this. Anybody can say it's going to be a private road. They sell all the houses in there, and next thing you know, the people that live out there go, how come we're paying as much taxes as everybody else and the town's not maintaining our road? So
Yep.
there's a point to where they would have to bring it up to a standard. So at what point is it the responsibility of the developer to do that up front instead of putting it on a landowner in the future? So that's the whole thing about a shared drive being something a little different, but you don't want your roads to go to that standard, if you know what I'm saying. That's my opinion. I mean, you can do what you want as a board.
Well, then you get into the whole battle of like, people have to give up their lots to make them wide enough to actually make.
Yeah, because a private road could be a
and-
narrower
yeah.
standard too.
okay, so now this will change. It'll simply read, where a common drive serves 4 lots, the roadway shall be built to town specifications for a private road, period. Okay. Okay, 12.315, this is a new sub-article. This is based on a conversation that I had with the fire chief. The maximum line that they can run is 1,000 feet. So they get into a situation where they have a structure that's more than 1,000 feet off the roadway. They got to be able to access it through the driveway. So he and I discussed this, that driveways longer than 1,000 feet shall normally have a turnout every 500 feet. And in fact, remember, I saw a turnout on that subdivision, that 3 house. They actually had provided for that. Every 500 feet to facilitate vehicle movement during an emergency response, the planning board may approve a different number and locations for turnouts that result from this requirement, if recommended by the fire chief. So in talking to Chief Walker, he said, well, yeah, we agree, this is the base requirement, every 500 feet if you're out beyond 1,000. But he also said, he said he's been down a lot of driveways in town and said, but there are circumstances where maybe you didn't need as many, or it might be, maybe it's 1,200 feet, so I wanted one at 600 feet, and that would be sufficient. For
Topography issues, being able to see
Yep.
from one turnout to the next, it's all
Right. Yeah.
stuff that you would look at on site.
Right, so I wrote it such that, the base requirement is every 500 feet if it's longer than 1,000, but it can be modified if Chief Walker says, yeah, I've looked at it and you can do something different.
The only thing I'm questioning, you guys can do what you want, to put in your regulation as recommended by the fire chief, It's almost like you have to do whatever that fire chief says. And do you want it written that way? I know technically you could waive it, but I think you should think about the writing that's on there.
I kind of agree, for different reasons, I agree with that. I would say,
Well-
if approved by the fire chief, because recommended means it's kind of more proactive. I think you want to go to the fire chief and get him to agree,
Well,
rather than.
I guess here's the piece, and this is what I see as John's alluding to. You're essentially making the fire chief part of your planning board.
Well, that's
Become a
why,
decision maker.
wait a minute, that's the why I wrote it this way. It says the planning board may approve if recommended. So this does not tie the planning board that they have to follow the fire chief's recommendation. He makes a recommendation, we may approve something different based on that recommendation. That way he doesn't become an ad hoc member to the planning board.
Right.
Or have a floating rule. That's what I was worried about. But where you say may, it's not a floating rule.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's
I
kind
didn't,
of-
I didn't have a problem with that. I thought recommended by means, he's got to recommend something. I view the process as more the person goes to him and asks for his approval or concurrence, rather than him recommending something.
Normally he would, and we get feedback from if you look at.
Right, all the departments.
All the departments, we get from the fire chief,
You.
police department, to the highway department, we get recommendations from them.
Well,
And then we decide, how to act on that based on what their recommendations are.
One good example is like line of sight.
Yep.
If you get that, we're not asking them to be recommended by the fire chief, but if he looks at this and he says, I think we should do something different in this case, that makes it allowable.
Is your father?
Famous.
What just?
That's my wife.
Say hi.
They called in to wish him a happy birthday.
Oh, should we all sing?
Well, actually, my birthday was yesterday. So.
Happy birthday.
Where's the cake?
Yeah, where is the cake, Ron? That was your job.
It's at the B&B.
I don't need the cake.
All right.
So I guess it's all good, right? When you said that, it gives the planning board latitude. At first, the way I read it, it was almost like you were putting in your standards as whatever the fire chief decides is the standards, and that should be more clear, but does it say that you basically can waive that standard if recommended by the fire?
Yeah, I kind of drew on my experience from my previous life, and
I misread it.
we used to allow ourselves outs in case we wanted to do something different than what we'd written. And so that's why it's worded the way it's worded. It doesn't bind us to whatever recommendation the fire chief or anybody else makes to us, or even the road agent. I mean, but in 99 times out of 100, we wouldn't be very smart to ignore their recommendations.
I didn't want to get into one where, like, now we have the stuff on our road, our driveways.
Sorry.
Well, we have a minimum road width driveway width that's written in our regulations.
There's always a one.
And the fire chief wanted something wider. Your hands were kind of tied. You can only approve what the regulation says, even though he recommended something different. But see here, it's like the way this is written, he's actually recommending that you could give some type of relief to have it more than the 500 feet. But the way I read it now, at first I looked at it as a floating requirement that he could change his mind. So I think the way you wrote it's fine. It was the way I read it.
Okay.
I still have a problem with the recommended. I think, to me, he's not going to recommend a change from the standard. I think the process is going to be, the applicant's going to go to him and try to negotiate something, and
But
that'll be approved by, I think the applicant go to a recommendation, which the fire chief will say yes or no, and go with, say yes to that or something else.
He's not a member of the planning board. He can't approve an applicant's application, and whether it's in accordance with the regulations or not. He's not a voting member of the board.
It's like when you do with your class 6 and private road, you actually make a recommendation to the select board, but you kind of do it as, your recommendation going to them. It's the same concept.
Right, and those people don't listen to anything you say anyway. I can say that.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
I always knew that was the truth.
The recommendation can be something different too, because this is based on length of hose.
Right.
So what if there's more to just the hose. There's also head height of what if the truck can pump. So what if it's a
Yeah,
vertical rise, whatever, they can
right.
only make it 300.
Have something different,
Yeah.
so, like I said, I would expect 99 times of 100, we want to follow his recommendations.
I can tell you they have done the 1,000 foot of hose pump at my plant just to test it and see if they could
Yeah.
get 1,000 feet and a spray and all of that. And they can. I can speak from experience with hose running.
Again, it's not the distance of the hose though, Andy. It's not the distance of the hose. But say if there's an incline.
Right.
If you're going over 1,000 feet and you go up 800 feet, that pump might not be able to do that at that point.
Mhm.
And the fire chief knows what it can do, especially if he has, empirical data that he got at your plant. He'll say,
That's
"Well,
why
I
he's
can't-"
asking for the,
Right.
Right.
that's why he's
It-
recommending,
Well,
Turnaround.
and that's why.
We used to call it a hammerhead.
Right.
and you'd bring in a truck 500 feet from the first truck to make up that difference.
To give it more punch.
One pump onto another pump, so one
Yeah.
feeds the other, so.
It could be
Series of lines.
It's not just distance, it could be elevation.
That's what I'm
also
saying,
that could affect these things, so, I mean, he gives us a recommendation, and it's different. We, like Andy and I were referring to, these applications go out to the police department, the highway department, they go to the fire department and say, do you have any comments on this? And frequently, we do get comments back. So they are reading them, they give us recommendations, and so, and then we act on that.
But I don't think I think the way that it's written is a good way, because we're not saying that we're putting the recommendation decision on the fire chief.
Right.
The fire chief will look at the plan and say, either I agree with the way it is as the standard, or I would recommend something different, something
Right.
above and beyond.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
Or you
Alright.
could come in and say like, there's 1,100 feet or 1,200 feet, and he'll say, well, 600 will meet it here because, we got a good area for turnouts, we got pretty straight
Yeah.
sight distance. So I recommend that you go ahead and you can have
Yeah.
it 600 feet instead of 5.
John,
Same.
Ron Ollery shook his head up and down, so I want to move on.
Oh, contact.
Okay.
See that.
One more and go home.
Okay,
You want listen, if you live on a lake, like-
1232, parent 7. Can you live with it, Ron?
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on.
Sometimes that's the best we can do. Okay, so here's another thing that we've discussed umpteen times at the planning board. Has to do with culvert. We say 15 inches in diameter. And by the way, I did make a change to a strict 12 inches being the minimum up in the drainage system specs in the site plan review, because the whole 15 inches is around the culvert where the driveway or private road intersects the public road. So that's what the 15-inch requirement pertains to. However, we have had cases where people wanted to use 12, and in one case, the road agent actually wanted to use 12 because there was ledge that ran underneath the culvert, and they weren't going to have sufficient space and have the cover over the culvert if they used a 15-inch versus a 12-inch. So this says that, so this allows some flexibility to say that we'll normally use 15. However, the road agent can determine that they can use 12 with 12 inches of cover, but the road agent may specify something else. He did want to add, because this has been an issue, how long do the culverts have to be? How far beyond the edges of the drive do they have to extend? So these words, the culvert shall extend 8 feet out from the edge of the pavement or the beginning of the slope from the driving surface for unpaved drives. That is something that he's requested. He's run into problems.
That is a really long piece of pipe.
Look at what the current one, 30 feet. So this is not going to be really any longer than what's current. This is
It will be.
a minimum.
22 feet of road, then you got.
Well,
shoulders,
well,
then you got
A road, if you got a road, but if you got a drive right now, if you put in a driveway and your driveway is 12 feet, you still got to put in a 30-foot culvert. So he was trying to gauge it by this, and I guess this is standard practice. Now, I did ask if he was available to join us by phone. Is he showing up, Connor?
I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were talking about.
Mark Morrow?
Nope.
Okay, I mean, I can't defend for me from personally, but this is what the road agent says is the standard and one.
We can ask him to give us comment to this before you have your public hearing and vote, just so everybody's happy with
I'm
it.
with 8 feet seems like a lot.
This is what,
Yeah, he can explain it to you.
he can explain it. You know, this was written at his request.
Yep.
He's reviewed all the changes that pertain to the road agent. I've sent to him and he's reviewed. He had one tweak, which I'll get to.
And Mr. Chair, we can have the town's engineer record take a peek at it too. We can ask CMA to take a look and welcome input.
Okay.
For your next meeting.
Okay. When do we
We
want to
good?
hold a hearing on this?
I'll tell you that.
And the way this is going, I mean,
No, I know.
so we're gonna try to do the public hearing on the second meeting?
Did you want to do 2 hearings, one for subdivision and one for site review, or try to do them concurrent at the same time?
I think in case, well, Barbara hasn't given them to you yet, but you haven't seen the spreadsheet for the site plan review. It is,
You guys are gonna be here for a week.
it's more than twice as long as this one.
Okay, now.
But I will say that, I mean, a lot of the changes, you're gonna look at it and go, oh yeah, I already seen that in the subdivision. So we've basically already discussed it.
Tomorrow's the deadline. I got one coming up, and I'm gonna get another one because Scott Cole was talking.
All right, so yeah, if we can get this straightened out by the next meeting so that we could go ahead and put it up for public, I can make any modifications just like that.
And I might recommend that you get through the review process and then maybe schedule the public hearing, the formal public hearing, which will basically be a cursory review by the planning board. Have that for the same day, you know, maybe your second meeting in
Well, that's what I'm thinking. The subdivision, we could probably get through the second meeting in April.
then
And I'm thinking that we could do the public hearing on this and have the discussion on site plan review regulations. Because
That's
that,
different than what I was thinking.
He was thinking, review the other ones.
Review
and do
these, review
public-
subdivision, and public hearings
Both.
together, second meeting in May, first meeting in May.
If you guys got all stuff worked out, it should be relatively quick.
I would think, on these, I would think so.
I mean, once you get down your discussion, you hold your public hearing, it should be, any issues with any of these?
I was thinking the public hearing on the subdivision, the second meeting in April. If we could approve it at that meeting, that would be great.
Vanessa, do you think that you're going to update and finalize the documents and do all that subdivision and site review at the same time and release 2 new documents at the same time? Or do you think it would be beneficial to have full approval of site review at the second meeting in April and then be working on that while the board's reviewing subdivision?
No, we're doing subdivision right now.
I said it backwards, I'm sorry. Subdivision, then site review.
I thought it would be a lot to try to cover both regulations in one public hearing, in one meeting. I would think that we'd want to do subdivision, get that done. We can have the public hearing and approve the subdivision regulations. I mean, the potential exists. We got to allow for something could come up at the public hearing that would require us to change the subdivision regulations, and then we'd have to have another public hearing, right?
If you made any substantial changes, yes.
Right, if it's a minor change, no. If it's if there's any now, I can't imagine there's gonna be any substantial changes, but I can't predict the future.
It's just a matter of what we work out with this one that we just talked
I
about, the
get-
road agent, that might be a little bit of a change there.
Yeah, I guess my thought was we could get these cleaned up and ready to go for a public hearing and potentially a vote at the second meeting. After we get that off the table, Barbara was going to pass out the site plan review regulations at the next meeting. And so depending if the board has time, then at that second meeting, once we dispense with the subdivision regulations, could move on to having this discussion for site plan. That was what I had in my mind.
I think I'm kind of leaning toward Connor a little bit. I don't think we get that much public comment, number one. And if I'm public, I don't want to come back to 2 meetings. I really want to come for, I don't want to come back to 2 meetings.
Well, Well, I mean, site plan is, the changes are much more extensive. Many mirror what's in here. So I would say roughly half of the changes in site plan are simply, we have a big disconnect right now between the subdivision and site plan, like document submittal timelines, the 2 years. We've got conditions precedent, time limits in subdivision and none in site plan. So I've tried to mirror the requirements in the two so that, because there should be no difference in when do they give us the documents and what are the timelines. That doesn't vary in state law. State law, it marries the two of those, whether it's subdivision or site plan. So there's no reason to have these differences between site plan and the subdivision regulations.
Right, I just don't think we get much public comment. I think bringing them back twice, inviting the public twice to look at changes is less preferred than having it done once.
It's cheaper too. Less to post in the paper.
I agree.
Was it 27% voted?
If we can do it in one shot, I would much rather deal with the pain one go around as opposed to two.
All I can say, past times when the site review and subdivisions were changed, you get 1 or 2 people show up.
I understand.
Audience.
I understand. Where's the audience?
Those 23.
My wife won't be there
for that one.
The content is thematically related between
Hey,
subdivision and site plan. So it should be done at the same time
I
because
mean,
there's so
in
much overlap.
reality, I mean,
Can you live with it, Jeff?
this is yes, I can. Well, the reality is, and I will say, I will preface this, some people already know, this is my last meeting probably for this year with the planning board. But I am going to stay connected. I have all the files. I will continue to work with the planning board to get this done. So you guys are going to have to decide when you want to do these things. I have no problem. I'm just so anxious to see this done. I don't want this to fall by the wayside again.
Can I throw an option out? If there's a lot of work that has to be done and we figure there's 2 nights of work to be done on the part of the planning board, why can we plan, come up with what we want to do, submit it to Vanessa for whatever fine tweaking or has to be done to it. The next meeting, we do the second part of it, and then we bring them both to a public meeting at one time. That way, we give enough of our effort into it and give it what it deserves.
Well, I would just say, based on this conversation, I will tell you that the work I put in and the rigor with which I pursued that task was no less than what is in the subdivision. So based on what I'm seeing here, I don't expect that you're going to have a lot of comments or there's going to be significant changes to that. That probably the changes are more extensive in site plan review, but probably less controversial than some of these things. So, I mean,
Vanessa, do you have an opinion?
no.
Right away.
I guess, what would the board's expectation for a finalized product?
Well, I'm
I
actually,
mean, this is excellent, and having this and then at the public hearing, are you looking to have a finalized document like?
Looking for perfection.
the finalized,
I can do that, but.
if you accepted all the changes.
Carol
that
can
are
help me,
here,
maybe.
if you accept all the changes that are on this spreadsheet and on the spreadsheet for the site plan review, those documents are done. I have edited those documents,
I think it's just more of a
reformatted,
matter of
same fonts, all of these changes are there.
putting it
All
here.
that you have to do is press the accept changes button and they're done.
So for the hearing process, we use this.
That's what I'm wondering.
Right,
That's my.
we'll use this for the
question.
hearing process, and then once this is approved, then those documents that Jeff has already, they will just print them with the changes, and then we can give it to all the board members, and that will go on the site. Those will be our new
Right,
regulations.
right.
Well, actually, you have a copy of that document with all the changes incorporated. And I did a simple markup that turned off, all the comments and stuff. But you actually have a PDF copy of that document. Both documents are done.
And we're also going to, and I think part of the reason the timing makes sense, or the ironing out the timing now makes sense, is because in between now and the public hearing, we're gonna pay the town's attorney to take a look at the language that we're proposing to change, just to make sure that they don't have any big red flags. Not a full in-depth review, but they do a lot of land use stuff, and, I think it's a worthwhile investment to get a cursory review.
Yep.
So we'll probably do that, but between when you're generally comfortable with the updates and before the public hearing, so that if there
Before
are
the
any
public
major
hearing.
changes, we're not,
Yep.
crossing wires, so.
Okay, so who's gonna go back to the road agent to,
I mean, that's the
Ask
only thing
about
that's hanging
this.
out, right? They-
Yep, Jeff.
Well, the only thing we question is.
Vanessa.
8 feet.
okay, so the question, okay, so to finish up this,
For the 12.
it's the 8 feet out beyond the sides that people are questioning, right?
Yes. I think this is the only question.
Yeah.
Everything's been presented so far.
Yeah, the last line I added was culverts internal to a subdivision shall be sized appropriately per an engineer plan with a minimum diameter of 12 inches. That mirrors something that's in the current site plan review regulations. And this is just to address an issue that we've had come up multiple times before the board, that we've granted waivers for the 15 inches because it's not clear that, the 15 inches applies to the culvert that's under the intersection of the road or drive with the public road. Internal to into the subdivision, there's some pretty sophisticated drainage plans like the Dove development. I mean, there's probably miles of, under drains and other things. Those typically 12 inches are sufficient to meet the flow characteristics under site plan review regulations. So this just corrects a problem we've talked about multiple.
As it exists now, it's kind of ambiguous.
It is.
On each side, that gives you a 28-foot culvert,
It can. So,
or is it 8, 4
Well,
and
no,
8?
because
additional
He's
feet.
from the fill extension, so if that road.
Well, I'm just saying the way you read it.
Yeah, that road's raised up 4 feet in the air because there's a culvert going through, because getting down to the culvert area, the
Right.
spot
This
is.
is just a driveway though, right?
You could have fill extensions that are 40 feet wide, and then you
Yeah.
can add 8 feet to each
no,
one.
no, this says it's from the edge of the pavement, not from the bottom of the slope.
You read the rest of it, it keeps going.
Yeah, I wrote it, John. Yes, it says, where is it?
Or at the beginning of the slope, so I was
But
taking
that
it
says
8
for
feet at the beginning
unpaved
of.
surface.
No, wait a minute, at the beginning of the slope from the driving surface. So not at the bottom of the slope. This is up
For unpaved surfaces.
for unpaved surfaces. So either it's 8 feet from the edge of the pavement, or it's 8 feet from where the slope starts from the driving surface going down to the ditch line. So either way, it's the driving surface is where you're taking the measurement from. That's why I specifically, because I had this debate with Mark and I go, well, 8 feet, yeah, but you got the slope, whatever. So
Yeah, because you could always put a head wall or something in to shorten it up on the side. so
could.
it's not a full slope.
you could. So
Is this a
That's-
driveway or a roadway?
We're talking driveway.
Kind of
talking-
both. It's kind of both. Yeah, there's the two issues that
Well-
Jeff was talking about on that 12.
But this is specific in subdivision to driveway, so,
But
yeah,
the site review references this.
yes,
this
it
thing,
does.
so All your site reviews, we're gonna be in the driveway things, is gonna have to meet this thing, because this is a reference to the site review that brings you to this.
Yeah, so that it's clear. So you gotta width the pavement and then it starts sloping off, or you've got flat gravel that you're driving on and then it's wherever that,
Yeah.
the width of the drive.
Yep.
It's 8
I'm on
feet
board.
there. So even if it extends out 8 feet, normally you're gonna be sloping out at least 3 to 4 feet. So you're gonna cover half of that,
Right.
that 8 feet up,
Unless you use a head wall, then you're gonna have,
unless you use a head wall.
as well as the 12 feet. for the
Anyway,
driveway.
so Vanessa's gonna check this with the road agent.
They're up to 28 feet.
I mean, you put drainages, you
Well,
you
But
put-
currently the regulation says 30.
Yeah, I know that. The way our improvements.
So what-
Knocking off 2
We're cutting
feet.
2 feet off.
Maybe more.
So what
Maybe
the
more.
issue is, just so you guys that haven't been here, there's times like Jeff had said earlier, sometimes you can't get the coverage over it and the frost is gonna raise the culvert up. So having a smaller culvert, you can bury it more, so you get the fill, so you're not gonna have the frost raising it.
It's usually like a foot.
Yeah, so you
Right.
want that, but sometimes because of the elevations that you're trying to create and getting that culvert at the drain line where it's
Right.
supposed to be, you can't get the coverage with the bigger culvert. And then the other ones, there's actually the flow characteristics he was talking about. You need a certain flow rate going through, which sometimes you need a smaller culvert to keep the leaves and stuff washed out so it doesn't get plugged up. So there's a couple instances where if we would have stayed with the 15-inch culvert, you actually would have had an inferior product, even though you think you got a better product because it's a bigger culvert.
Yeah, and so we ended.
I think the 12 is a good idea.
Right, well, we ended up going with.
It's been waived for many years.
Right,
Because
it's,
of those reasons.
and we've ended up with the getting a third-party review and the town engineer saying, well, you know, the requirement is 15. And we said, yeah, but the engineers that designed the system said 12. And they go, well, yeah, 12 would be better, but your regulation says 15. Which frankly is, no, we're not gonna get into that. We don't have the same town engineers anymore. Okay, so that's the one thing on this one you need to check. 12.7 table 2, that is an attachment. The reason this comes back, notice that's attachment 1, and it has to do with, I added a note 2 on the vertical alignment maximum grade. It says grade may exceed 2% for intersection with state roads when specified by New Hampshire DOT. So I asked, the current requirement is just the 2%. We ran into a problem. I don't know how I did that, but I copied the new note from the old table. Anyway, table 2 on the right, that's the new table. And the reason we did that is because we've run into problems when subdivision or sites that have a road that intersects with a state road. The one specifically I remember is across the middle school, the Berry development in there. The state said the slope of the road is such that they wanted 4% coming off of Route 9, and then there would be a dip and then rising up into the development. So we had to do a waiver on that. That's come up multiple times that, you know, the state dictates, they look at that, they got to give the driveway or road permit or intersection. And so they're the ones that call the shots on that. So this simply allows you to use something other than 2%. I asked Mark Rowe, he wanted to keep the 2%. He thought about it and came back and said, yeah, I want to keep the 2% for intersecting with town roads, but state roads, yeah, it's whatever the state says, New Hampshire DOT. So this just allows the board to do that without having to process a waiver.
While we're on the table though, the other thing that changed was all site distances should be computed for both vertical and horizontal. What were you thinking on that, Jeff?
Actually, that's explained in more detail in the site plan review regulations, I think. There's a whole discussion in here. So it's not just whether you got a corner going this way, but whether you got a slope such that you can't see.
So the person coming out of the driveway can see a car coming, or a car coming
Right.
down the road can see someone coming out of their driveway.
Yeah.
Because you could have sight in, because of either.
Yeah, got it. I understand. Okay.
Okay.
If you ever carry on past, and keep going down Young Road, as you come up toward our road,
Yeah.
you'll see exactly what he's talking about.
Right.
Cottage Lane and,
That road comes down.
Lindsay Point. It is almost treacherous at times. Like I actually look coming down Lindsay Point Road, I look for anyone coming from the left side because it creates a much longer sight line than it does when I hit the end of the dirt road to come out onto Young Road.
And in the short drive has a big issue because there's a huge rock if you go all the way to the end.
Okay. On the 12.813, and there's been one tweak here. I did it. I think you were. So on 12.813, so this was, I recognized that the references were out of date. I know more about road construction standards than I ever wanted to know. I went back and researched and had multiple discussions with Mark Moreau. So basically what this should read, and I've changed it on mine. What does yours say? Yours says, oh, it does say 3.5, but it should say Course. Scratch the very. The reason, okay, so Mark went through it that in today's world, you notice it says crushed gravel. Crushed gravel has a lot of fines. It doesn't pack. It was the standard of the day 20 years ago, but today they use crushed stone. The state road construction recommendation said, okay, you can go to crushed stone. The reason they want to use crushed stone is it is widely available. Brock's over here makes it, is that when it compacts better because it doesn't have a lot of fines or round surfaces to it. It's jagged edges. And Mark tells me that it packs down like cement, but its porosity is good to let the water flow through it. So ultimately it forms a more solid base and better drainage. And so that is kind of like the current state of the art for road building. That'll let the roads last longer. And obviously that's to the advantage of the town. So that's why these things, plus I was updating the references, to be current. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's see, 12.3, this is table attachment 2. For some reason, I only have attachment 1.
Table's actually in the front of it. It's very front.
But in front of us, table 2, right?
Yeah, table 2. So these is table 3.
Oh.
There should have been 2 more tables. They were in the previous ones handed out. I didn't bring the previous ones with me. I'm trying to remember what table 3.
That was the stuff that had to do with the thickness of.
Oh, yes, it has to do with the thickness of the pavements. Yes, the next 2 tables, one had the thickness of the pavement and they mirror, actually. Yes, if you look over on the next page at 12.821, the changes in table 3 were to implement, currently it says a 2-inch lift of pavement, and then there's the 1-inch lift that's basically the top coat. He changed that to 2.5-inch lift for the first coat and 1.5 for the second coat. And this is based on current road construction practices.
It's because the
durability.
recycled material that they're using in the pavement now, you're not getting the total, call it sticky stuff, the actual asphalt that sticks it together, it actually goes, you don't have as much because they do the total count even based on the recycled asphalt. So in order to get it so that it all binds and compacts together, you need it a little thicker, so you had the total amount that's needed to make it so it all binds and stays binded and it doesn't separate.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's right. He did mention something about that. It has to do with recycled material. It has to be thick.
Yeah, because he was saying that right now, it's like half of the stuff you get is got 50%, I mean, the material you get sometimes is 50% recycled material in order to get it. So if you don't put it down thicker, your roads are just gonna fall apart.
Will this affect your bids for road paving?
Well, because of the recycled material that they're using, it actually costs less to go thicker with the recycled material than it does to get all new material that is not done.
Yeah.
Most of your asphalt plants, because of the grinding of roads and stuff that are being done, they want to reuse that recycled material because it helps with their costs too.
Okay.
I know Mark was saying that the percentage, it should be way less than what they're doing, but you've got to work with the guys manufacturing it, I guess.
So that
Conversation I had with them, yeah.
So that's what the table 3 update was, to change to the 1.5, 2.5 inch, and the references at the bottom of the table. I remember those. 12.814. This is simply to update the references to the current state standards. These standards that are currently quoted in the regulations have been superseded, so just to update the references. 12.821, 12.822, those are again, update the references and as we just discussed, because of recycled materials increasing by a half an inch, the first and second course lifted. You don't have attachment 3 evidently, but all that did, that is a table. I mean, if you look at the current, let's see, 12.8 to, if you look in your books, you will see, oh yeah, we can look at the tables that are currently in our books. This updates table 4 and this is table 34. Gotta fix that. It should be table 4, period. There's a recommended placement temperatures, and if you notice currently, it has no temperatures specified for 2.5 inch lift. So I inserted a table, I interpolated between the values for 2 and 3 and added a new column for minimum placement temperatures. So that's what that, and also I have just happened to notice, being the geek that I am, that the formula for converting degrees Fahrenheit to centigrade was incorrect, so I fixed that.
Nice catch.
So that's what that's all about. It just adds the temperatures, minimum temperature, so there's 2.5 inch. Okay, if there are no questions, then 12.8.3. This again was a just a request from the road agent. I guess they're using aggregate, crushed aggregate instead of crushed gravel for doing the shoulders. And I guess this is something they're currently using, so this updates the regs to current practice.
Aggregate as in pavement,
Say again?
as in chipped up pieces of pavement?
Not necessarily. Crushed aggregate can be stone that's crushed up, busted ledge crushed up in the whole bit. That's what blocks is, that's why they wanted to increase their pit capacity over there for that, getting all that stone out, because there's a huge market because of the road construction. And it's not just the gravel, like Jeff was saying before, where you crush the gravel, you get a lot of fines and you're not getting all that angular pieces to compact. And because what you're really trying to do is protect that road edge. So if you got, when you put the gravel, it packs really hard. If someone drives off the edge of the road, but they're going back and forth, the edge of that road pavement's protected, so it's not slowly breaking off, narrowing your roadway up.
I just wonder if it's fairly large pieces of material, maybe it wouldn't be. That
Typically,
might
they
be more
use
hazardous as far as bicyclists, for instance, might be.
Yeah, like a 3/4.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so 12.10.2, C and D, this updates the language to match the previous changes in the tables to use crushed stone instead of gravel. So it's just updating it to match the previous. Appendix 1. We still have to talk about that. I don't know if, did you tell Vanessa about it, but I gave, the road agent, the highway department gave us a list of private and public roads in Barrington. I went to update the list that's currently in the back here. There's a listing. I started with A for private roads. We list 4 or 5 private roads beginning with A, 5, 2, 4, yeah, 5. We list 5 private roads beginning with the letter A. The highway department had 4, and they were a different 4. So the road agent and what the.
Same thing, it's a mess. It's in the back of that book.
I know, so, I mean, I'm not even sure why this is in here, but.
I don't either.
I don't know why we need this in here in the subdivision regulations. So I guess that's one thing. I don't know why,
Tourist thing.
if we need to retain it.
Filler.
If we don't, that solves the whole
Probably
problem.
because it's already a road name.
It is useful We actually used it.
I have to say that in the 6 years I've been on the board, I don't think I've ever consulted this list. I asked the planner if that's a private road or a public road, and they tell me.
It sounds like
I don't disagree. I just,
reckless
I
abandon.
can tell you, I've like, until you gave me this, I was like,
There's a list.
spaced on the fact that it even was here.
So I will tell you, and I don't, this isn't a mess that I can straighten out. So I'm, you know, I sent it to Barb and John, and they can then pass it off to you, Vanessa. See,
I reviewed all mine and roads missing is the problem and some names have changed. That's,
yeah. So I can't fix
If I
that.
can recommend, so the highway department, for my purpose, for the town's purpose, is the keeper of the records for town names, classifications. And so maybe if you take that out and make a reference to the highway department maintains a list of all roads, the planning board doesn't name roads anyways.
No, we don't.
So it doesn't necessarily matter what the road name is.
Well,
If you need to know about classification, like you said, you can ask the planner.
I thought that too. I only was going to update it because it already exists. I do have the file that the highway department sent me with all of the names that we could just do a cut and paste. You know, I'm with you. The highway department, I would think, would be the ones keeping the master list for the town.
John,
Could I make a
Carol,
suggestion? Just take appendix 1 right out of there. It's not needed.
that's what I was gonna ask. Is
Right.
there any requirement, Carol, that you know of or best practice to keep something like that in there?
No, there is not.
I don't have an objection to doing away with it.
Be nice if we're on the website. Somebody
It's-
wanted to look it up.
It's reference, yes, I'm doing that. It's
Put on the
reference,
website. It doesn't have to be in your subdivision.
Steve?
yeah,
reference where?
it's reference related to scenic road access, 12.3.6 and 12.2, road classification and design.
So how do you determine which one is scenic road?
Some of them are listed as scenic road that actually says.
Only have like 3.
Right, but it doesn't say that in here, so.
That's here, local.
Or, back Canaan?
It does say scenic partial.
What?
Let's go to your C.
I mean,
The question is, do we want to?
I like Mr. Driscoll's idea. Let's get an updated version available on the town's website, get it out of your regulations. We can point, you just eliminate it altogether in your regulations. And in the scenic roads section that Mr. Diamond mentioned, you could just make comment that the list of roads and classifications is
Right.
available on the town's website.
Yep.
Or contact the highway department.
Right.
Contact the highway department.
Right. All right. So I can,
Mostly the scenic roads affect utility trimming too, right?
Not just utility, the town too.
The town-
We're held to that same
The
standard.
homeowner can do what they want on the road, but the town can't. Believe it or not, by state law. It's a crazy law, but that's what it says.
all right. So
Because they actually have rights to that road.
Well, they technically own to the center.
I will change 12.3.6 to refer to the highway department.
Is that what you say?
Well, it was either that or go to the website. Now,
A website or?
Either. I would maybe just say highway department in there, because that's gonna be the official,
right.
in case we.
I
ever
don't-
update.
Do they have the list posted? Because I don't think so.
Well,
They
that's what I'm
sent it
saying.
to
It's a
me.
great suggestion.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to do.
Okay, so,
Some of this.
all right, so we'll eliminate,
Change too.
And then maybe we can convince
back
real
in Dart
estate
Lane.
agents to look at the classification of a road and educate their potential buyers whether or not the town's going to maintain their road, so they don't constantly pull the wool over their eyes and sell them houses in the summer with no anticipation that they
Road
might have to
might be a
spend
fix.
$500 a year on.
Okay. all right, so that fixed appendix 1. The last 2 things on the list were,
That would never.
there were 3 different fonts that were used. Over the years, people made changes, not paying attention. So the planning and land use, all the documents, they use Times New Roman. So I just went through and just reformatted everything, Times New Roman.
What
size did you use?
Some of the stuff that happens, you just.
So, yeah, so it's all gonna look the same for a change. And there was missing punctuation, spelling, a lot of stuff I fixed, you know. So that's the end of the list. So if I understand correctly, there's just 2 outstanding issues now that we fixed Appendix 1. I appreciate that help.
In addition.
What's that?
I'm sorry, talking about myself, and I was like, in addition of, to look, you said to look in those, to the 12.3.6.
Right. So change,
Sorry, just talking-
to add a change to 12.3.6 to refer them to the highway department and so we can delete Appendix 1, and the other one was for Vanessa to talk to the road agent about the length of culverts that he.
I think, Vanessa, to me, there'd be 2 questions. Measured from the edge of the roadway, the slope beside it can vary dramatically. So depending how steep the slope is or how gradual the slope is, you may have 2 feet of exposed pipe or 6 feet of exposed pipe. So I guess I'm questioning whether the edge of the roadway is the right way to measure this. Maybe you gotta have so much exposed pipe or something, you know. That's my other question. I mean, if you have a really, on our road, we have drainage ditches that are fairly steep because we wanted to drain there. So it cuts down the mud in the springtime. So if you got a really steep slope and the pipe sticks out 8 feet, I mean, do you need 8 feet? If it's gradual, I think you might need 8 feet. So
Or if you got a head wall, it would cut it down even more.
Yeah. So I guess my question is the other question besides the 8 feet, is that the right place to measure it from? Or should we do something that's specific to the slope involved for that application?
Or a certain distance from where the culvert ends to where the fill material starts.
Much exposed pipe there should
Right,
be, or
because-
something like that.
Yeah, because I think he's worried about sediment building up and flooding the pipe.
Yeah.
The pipe is too close to where that edge is because it'll act like a dam.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have 8 feet of exposed pipe, it's really steep, you know, that's 7 feet. That's a lot of pipe hanging out there for no good reason.
Especially when we get frost in the winter.
It heaves.
Yeah.
It heaves. So not only is it 8 feet, but you know, should the slope match? Should we measure from the road edge? Should we measure from how much exposed pipe there is? Or something like that? It's another question.
And I think Mark could probably explain that to you quite well in his rationale. Mark, when it comes to road construction, Mark's probably one of the smartest guys I've talked to. He really is. He's really good at road
He's
construction.
well written, so when you talk to him, Vanessa, you can ask him to, write a paragraph up of the justification to be discussed at the next planning board meeting. He'd be glad.
On occasion, fire code has come up, and since it's proprietary information, we can't look it up ourselves. We have to ask the fire chief. So there's a couple instances where we've wondered about this and looked it up. Like for instance, radius of turns. Fire code says the fire chief has to. It's up to the fire chief's discretion about what the radii of turns have to be, but they don't say what that radii is. So if we were to ask the fire chief, what is the radii of turns? What does it have to be? Then we could put it in the subdivision and we would know and be a place we easily access. Similarly,
I
one
have
other
to take
example.
exception with that one because we went through this in the Dove development in that the fire chief came back and, we do require that people do calculations to show on the plans that fire equipment can move through the development. It was in a negotiation with the fire chief. It was not just that development, another one where we had a cul-de-sac in which it was the fire chief working with the applicant that they varied the distance. So I don't want to specify. I think it's intentionally vague in the code. And I think that the fire chief needs the latitude to look at circumstances and be able to, come to some agreement. He's going to make a recommendation. If the applicant ignores them and it gets to the board, which it will, when the fire chief makes his recommendations, well, that would not be smart on the part of the applicant. And we're not going to ignore what the fire chief has concluded. So I don't see a reason to put any specific numbers in the requirements. I just assume we leave it as a variable.
In the Dove development, he had the because a Rochester or Dover tower or ladder come in for the turn,
Yeah,
or one of the turns.
Because of the height of the buildings that were in there,
Right.
different than our regular
And
stuff.
probably
so it can vary.
one too, Stone Arch, that's 40-foot building, right? 40 feet tall.
Well, even if we're gonna refer to another code, you don't wanna take that and put it in your thing. You wanna reference the code.
Right.
So if it changes, you don't have to change your.
You don't have to change your regulation, yeah.
No.
Well,
So-
in the Stone Arch one, if you look at it, they actually did the turn radius for tractor trailer trucks for delivery. So that's actually gonna be a higher standard than you would have for a fire truck.
Got WB 62, right?
Yeah, so.
Anyway,
So it depends on what they're gonna be doing. Sometimes the requirement's actually more that we're gonna want than what the fire code calls for.
I'm with
So-
you on the radii turns.
Okay.
I'm with you there. But the other example that I thought of was the suddenness of grade changes, say at a driveway. Is that simply an absolute of, we want to make sure an ambulance can transition here? So it should always be the same, or is that subjective?
We got a transitional change in our regulations, don't we think they're in there?
We do, yeah.
I think we do. Yeah, it's going to vary, Steve, because it depends on the apparatus as well as what's the slope coming off of the road? How long is the transition? What's the final slope? So that's kind of a variable. You have to demonstrate that in fact, we will be able to get fire and ambulances, fire apparatus ambulances into whatever driveway or road that they're building.
Well, and I believe we went through that where they had to be able to demonstrate sufficient transition right down the road here on Thatcher Way when they came before for that
Well, that was another
that
issue with
last
Dove's
house.
development too, when they were coming up and had to come up the slope to get up to the upper residences.
Right.
It's a valid concern, and I know it's something that we have addressed as a board in the past, and we've actually had in some cases, people put it on the plans that show what those calculations are, so.
I just don't trust myself to remember everything, all my conversations and understandings with the fire chief. I kind of would like whatever we can to get into the regulations so I can search it easily.
Do we want that liability though? Don't we want to have the fire chief give his input, the police chief give his input and not have?
Yeah.
Especially if the fire code changes. You don't
Right.
want to have a regulation that's in conflict with the fire code.
No,
That
but
has to do with the commercial side.
I guess so the point though is, is this sufficiently addressed in our regulations in order to ensure that the applicant addresses this concern when they're drafting up their plans?
Well, I mean, back to the big part, I kind of like the fire chief way on this rather than us talking about.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, whenever there's a transition, we almost always ask about it.
we do.
So I don't think what we're doing now is change.
Well, the fire code is a 5% transition. I know it because of some other stuff I dealt with. But I just don't see it in our regulations. I see like tangent, from reverse curves and stuff like that, but I don't see a transition on an elevation to where they got a maximum.
What section you in, John?
Under the road section on page 57, that whole table where design standards, and usually if it's in there, you would think they would have something about a transition, from, because transition is the problem with bottoming out, whether you're going over a hump or coming up onto one. And it's all based on wheelbase for the fire department stuff, but, we need to look at it more than just for that, because your tractor trailer truck probably has a longer wheelbase, which would bottom out easier than that. So, but that 5% transition is a typical standard thing I've seen a lot of places. That's why because I've seen this so many places, I just assumed it was in here, I guess, when I was thinking about this, but it actually isn't. I mean, it is a good point. It is something that maybe should be added to that chart.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, so, under 12.14, safety, all subdivision roads must be constructed as to allow emergency vehicles to safely enter, drive upon, and exit prior to the issuance of any building permit. So, that is a general requirement. It says equipment has to be able to access the site.
Yeah, but John's saying it might be nice to have something here too.
But then you're back to specifying numbers. There's a lot of variables. If we wanted to add something to be more specific that says, the application the applicant will demonstrate, or that emergency apparatus will be able to enter and exit.
Safely enter, drive upon, and exit.
Yeah,
To the issue.
so this already says that.
Mhm.
And it's just for the board to say, hey, how do you address this requirement?
You'll have to rely on your fire chief's recommendation.
Yeah, just put a line in further information get from the fire department.
Well,
I
yeah,
guess Steve's asking, and I guess John's asking too, is there a de facto standard
I
we should put
don't,
in there?
I know that 5%'s in the fire code, but
we're back to if that changes tomorrow, now we're out of date.
Yeah, maybe we just leave it open.
because I see you got maximum grades for your slopes, but it doesn't talk about a transition.
No,
Maximum slope is not a, is that in the fire code?
No, maximum grade? No, it's not.
Yeah, so
You're
that,
not in the fire code. It just says a transition of 5%. So you could transition 5% 4 times to come up to a 20% grade. But we made sure we didn't want the roads that steep because it's more of slipping in the winter and that kind of stuff
Okay.
because of the road conditions we have here. Barrington, we're not the Midwest. We have a little bit of topography to deal with sometimes.
do we?
Depends on where you are in town.
well, and I just, pulling a number out of some other code that can change. And ultimately, there's a lot of variables because the slope of the driveway, the slope coming off the road, the length of the tangent length, that can vary. So, but they need to demonstrate that, and they're gonna have to work with the fire chief, and they're gonna have to do some calculations, because they know what the length of the apparatus is and the distance between the tires, the bodies,
Mhm.
So you're saying 12.14 is sufficient, and we should leave it there?
I would think so.
I think I'm being persuaded by that.
But you know what? We should draw on our expertise, Andy. What do you,
We have them show up with their vehicle and talk to them.
so do you think that what we have is sufficient?
Yeah, it's sufficient.
Okay,
Chief Walker would tell you something different.
okay.
His being more active in recommendations is helpful.
All right. So are we at the end of this exercise for tonight?
A second.
You gotta have a motion for.
I was like, motion to adjourn?
So, okay, so Vanessa's gonna work with the road agent. I'm gonna change it to delete appendix 1 and add verbiage tied to section 1. And we agreed that on the 4-lot business, it's just gonna be, hey, servicing 4 lots. You're gonna build it to private road standards, right?
Oh, no, that's part of the sentence, yeah.
Right. Okay, so the plan, so, I can get this, my part done, whatever. The next
20 minutes?
couple of days. I could possibly do that, but I'm probably gonna go have a scotch instead, but.
Now you're speaking my language.
And then, I don't know, so when do you want to have the public hearing on this? That would be the second meeting in April?
I think
Or
we
not.
decided to
Yeah, so if you
consolidate.
do
Or
the
you're gonna
second meeting of
consolidate.
April, and that first meeting of April, you want to discuss those changes that were up to make sure that you got a finalized document.
Oh, wait a minute, yeah, no, Ron just brought up, you guys decided you wanted to do this all together, right?
I think that was the.
Well, the public hearing for both of those,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
If you
so,
want to do another
so
working
Barb-
group,
well, we're gonna have to
Address
for the site, I don't, do we need it?
but I think you guys ironed everything out.
On this particular set, it sounds like we got
I think we need to follow up on one issue.
Just
one issue and that's it.
following
The
up
rest of
on
it, we've come to agreement here.
Yeah.
So we could get those and get the changes out for probably the next meeting. And then the second meeting in April, we could go through the site plan review, work session for site plan review.
That's all you're gonna put on that day? Site review?
I think it
Considering the
looks
amount
like
of time we
it,
spent today, I think that's a good idea.
especially if it's twice as,
I appreciate we were trying to speed things up. So you see, when we tried to speed things up, this is as fast as we go. We're gonna need to do the same thing with the site plan review regulations.
Connor, what did you sign me up for?
Just wait till you get your next tax bill, you know, the discount you get for being a citizen volunteer.
Hey, you know what? When we get these things updated, it's gonna make your job.
So-
Double my.
So it sounds like May is when we want to do the
It
public
is
hearing
changed.
for
Five,
both.
650.
Action, and
Yeah,
depending, I guess
yes,
it
right,
depends on
yes.
what comes out, no, I take that back, I guess it depends what comes out of the April workshop.
That's true, but like I said
But our
before,
goal could be.
I would say that based on this discussion,
Man,
everybody's got a feel for what I did, and
Right.
I would envision
Yeah.
that
And
there
spend a
will,
legal review and get it.
it'll have to go legal review.
That
Second
depends how long it
meeting
might
in
be.
May,
Which is,
So,
second meeting in May, pencil in.
and there's
for
some
the
veterans
public
that
hearing.
get,
Do your,
it's just-
start.
Yeah, I remember they changed that a few years ago because there was a break. A guy who got out
To finish up.
46 to 48 or
Like
something.
Now, you can get that resolved before the
doesn't
public hearing,
take it,
and we'll be.
change
able
the
to
state.
Run it by legal
But-
and everything. I
but-
think it's a good timeframe.
But I will say that probably
Something to think.
half the changes in site plan review
I know Barrington's
to
doing,
bring
you know,
subdivision and site plan review into alignment,
it could.
and a lot of the changes in site plan review mirror some
Something.
changes that you're seeing.
Yeah, so do the hearing together.
when I was living in Rochester,
Plan on May,
tax.
Okay,
not scare off our new members.
all right, so we have one more order of business.
Motion to adjourn?
No.
there's some-
Come on, trying.
The Jody.
Chair will not entertain a motion to adjourn yet. So the last thing is, with my departure from the board here,
Oh, no. So,
is that, and I just want to say, you know, I will see how things stand at the end of the year, but I really appreciate everybody's efforts. I've enjoyed working and knowing all of you. I really appreciate it. With that said, we have to elect a new chair and vice chair. And so we're going to need motions for both positions. And I will enter a motion. I nominate Andrew Knapp to be chair of the planning board.
Oh, second it.
Okay? Barbara, take your pick. I know what that's all about. It's like, wow, it's not me. Yeah. Anybody but me. So the nomination is, will you accept it, Mr. Knapp?
Reluctantly.
Okay, that's good enough for me. I can accept that. All right, so we're gonna have a roll call vote here. All right, Jeff Brand, aye. Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Ron Allard,
Alan, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Andy M,
Andy, am I?
and, all right, Andy Knapp.
Nay.
All right, well, it carries. So Andrew Knapp is the new chair, and I guess officially, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm still running the meeting, so I'll accept the nomination for vice chair, and I nominate Ron Allard to be the vice chair.
Second.
Andy seconds. Third. And you will accept, correct?
Will accept.
Anybody else wants it, I would be happy to.
That's a yes. That's a yes.
Okay, I hear nobody else stepping up to the plate, so I heard, yes, I will accept. Roll call vote. All right, Steve Diamond,
Diamond, aye.
Andrew Knapp,
Aye.
Ron Allard,
Nay.
Buddy Hackett,
Welcome to the party.
Andy M.
Andy, am I?
Okay, and Jeff Brand. All right, so, did I miss somebody? No, yes, no. Okay, so, we have, now reluctantly, elected, Mr. L to be vice chair and Mr. Knapp to, be chair. So now I turn things over to Mr. Knapp.
Meeting adjourned?
Yep. Looking, looking for a motion to adjourn?
Difference.
I object.
Yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting until what date? The
Till the
April
April
5th.
that was-
Second.
Sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anybody against, put it that way.
See, that's why they stuck me. They didn't want me close enough to like.
Are you gonna have a vote?
Yes, roll call vote.
Yes.
Aye.
Fran, aye.
I'm viewing myself as chairman of vice.
Hey, vote.
Mr. Allard, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay.
Good enough. I've got enough for a quorum tonight.